Capgras Syndrome, when familiar faces feel wrong. Imagine returning home after a regular day. You see your partner, your friend, or your parent standing there. They smile, speak the way they always have, and even recall shared memories. But something in your mind whispers that it's not them. They look identical, but the feeling, the connection, is missing. You feel sure this person has been replaced by someone else. This unusual experience is known as Capgras Syndrome, a rare psychological condition where individuals believe that someone close to them has been replaced by an imposter. What makes this condition especially disturbing is that the recognition of the person's face is intact, but the emotional response is not. The person looks the same, sounds the same, yet the emotional bond feels disconnected. As a result, the brain tries to explain this mismatch and concludes the person must be a duplicate. Capgras syndrome often appears in people with certain neurological or psychiatric conditions, particularly those affecting memory, emotion, and perception. It's believed to result from a disruption between the brain's facial recognition centers and the limbic system, which processes emotion. When the emotional response is absent, the mind starts searching for an explanation. Rather than forgetting who someone is, individuals with Capgras syndrome remember everything, yet still believe they're speaking to a stranger. It's not about logic, it's about emotion. Their belief is firm, even if evidence proves otherwise. The experience can be deeply unsettling for both the person experiencing it and those around them. In clinical settings, Capgras syndrome is approached with sensitivity and care. Treatments often focus on managing the underlying causes, such as improving cognitive function or reducing symptoms of psychosis when present. Supportive environments, structured routines, and professional guidance can help the person regain a sense of emotional trust in familiar surroundings. While rare, this condition offers a fascinating glimpse into how human perception is shaped not just by what we see, but by how we feel. It challenges our understanding of identity, emotion, and recognition. How much of your reality depends on feelings you can't explain? Capgras syndrome is a reminder that the brain is not just a machine for thinking, it's also the lens through which we feel connection and trust. And when that lens is fractured, even the most familiar face can seem like a stranger. Alien hand syndrome, when your hand acts without you. Imagine trying to pour yourself a glass of water when suddenly your other hand knocks it over. You didn't intend to move it, you didn't plan it, and yet there it is, acting on its own, as if it had its own ideas. No, this isn't a scene from a movie. It's a rare neurological condition called alien hand syndrome, where one hand seems to operate independently of the person's conscious control. People with this condition often report that the hand performs purposeful actions, reaching for items, touching objects, even interacting with the environment without their permission. What makes this truly unusual is the sensation that the hand is no longer part of their own body. Instead, it feels foreign, like it belongs to someone else.
Alien hand syndrome is typically caused by neurological disruptions, often following certain types of brain surgery, strokes, or other events affecting communication between the brain's hemispheres. In particular, damage to the corpus callosum, the bridge between the left and right sides of the brain, can result in the two hands acting out of sync. One may follow conscious commands, while the other acts without intent. This condition is not about losing motor skills or physical strength. The hand is fully capable, but no longer feels connected to the individual's sense of agency. Imagine your body doing something while your mind watches in surprise, trying to understand why. In some documented cases, individuals found themselves continually correcting actions taken by their alien hand, such as closing a drawer just after it was opened, or removing items the other hand had just placed. These actions weren't random or reflexive. They had purpose, but not permission. Professionals approach alien hand syndrome through a combination of therapies that focus on increasing body awareness and regaining a sense of control. Occupational therapy and adaptive strategies can help individuals manage daily tasks more comfortably and safely. More than just a medical curiosity, alien hand syndrome challenges our understanding of autonomy and self-perception. What defines an action as truly yours, and how do you respond when part of your own body begins to behave like a separate entity? This rare condition reminds us that the brain's coordination and unity are essential for our sense of self, and when that harmony is disrupted, even something as familiar as your own hand can feel like a stranger's.
Reduplicative Paramnesia, when places feel like perfect copies. Imagine walking through a building you visited many times before. Everything looks familiar: the hallways, the furniture, the view from the window. And yet you feel convinced that this place is not the original. It's an exact copy, a duplicate. You're absolutely certain that the real location exists elsewhere, and this one is just pretending to be it. This fascinating phenomenon is known as reduplicative paramnesia, a rare psychological condition where individuals believe that a place has been duplicated, relocated, or replaced with a nearly identical version. Unlike simple confusion, this belief is deeply rooted and often resistant to evidence or explanation. Reduplicative paramnesia is typically associated with neurological conditions affecting the frontal lobes and the right hemisphere of the brain, regions involved in spatial awareness, memory integration, and emotional processing. When these areas are disrupted, the brain may struggle to accurately connect physical space with emotional familiarity. The result is a powerful feeling that the location is correct in appearance but wrong in essence. In clinical settings, individuals with this condition may insist that the hospital they're in is actually their home, just made to look like a hospital. Or they may claim that the real version of a place is somewhere else entirely, and that they've been transported without their consent. These ideas may sound strange, but to the person experiencing them, the belief feels completely logical and real. Importantly, reduplicative paramnesia doesn't involve hallucinations. The surroundings are seen clearly and accurately, but the meaning assigned to the place becomes distorted. This misperception creates a gap between what the eyes see and what the mind feels, leading to a complex and often frustrating experience. Treatment focuses on addressing the underlying neurological or cognitive conditions that contribute to the delusion. Gentle reassurance, structured environments, and consistent support can help individuals regain a sense of orientation and trust in their surroundings. Reduplicative paramnesia invites us to reflect on how much of our reality depends not just on sight, but on the emotional maps our brains create. The feeling of being in the right place is more than just physical, it's deeply psychological. When that sense is disrupted, even the most familiar environment can begin to feel strange, distant, or entirely duplicated. And in those moments, reality itself becomes something to question, not because of what you see, but because of what you believe. Hoarding disorder, when letting go feels unsafe. Picture a home where every surface is covered with items, magazines, electronics, clothing, unopened boxes, decorations, and stacks of papers that haven't been touched in years. To an outsider, it may look like clutter, but to the person living there, every object holds meaning, comfort, or a sense of security. The idea of parting with these items doesn't feel like organizing. It feels like losing something important. This is the world of hoarding disorder, a complex psychological condition where individuals find it extremely difficult to discard possessions, regardless of their actual value. The behavior is not about being untidy or collecting things as a hobby. It's driven by emotional attachment and a deep sense of unease at the thought of letting go. For someone with hoarding disorder, each item may carry personal significance. An old receipt might remind them of a positive memory. A worn-out blanket may represent a time when they felt safe. These items form an emotional landscape, one that provides structure and familiarity. This condition is often linked with other cognitive or emotional challenges, such as anxiety, perfectionism, or past emotional distress. Holding on to objects may feel like a way to maintain control, preserve identity, or protect oneself from future uncertainty. It's not uncommon for individuals to recognize that their behavior is unusual. They may feel overwhelmed by their environment, but the idea of discarding possessions can still trigger discomfort or guilt. The fear of needing an item later, or feeling that something might be useful someday, often leads to more accumulation. In severe cases, hoarding can impact daily functioning. Rooms may become unusable, living spaces grow narrower, relationships may be strained, but even when consequences are visible, the emotional resistance to change remains strong. Treatment involves patience, empathy, and often a combination of therapy and behavioral strategies. Helping someone with hoarding disorder means understanding their attachment to objects, not judging it. Over time, many individuals learn to replace emotional reliance on possessions with healthier coping mechanisms and renewed clarity about what truly matters. Hoarding disorder reminds us that our connection to things is never just physical, it's emotional. And in some cases, letting go isn't about losing an object. It's about facing a deeper fear. And when safety feels tied to stuff, even a simple decision like throwing something away becomes incredibly difficult. Alice in Wonderland Syndrome, when your perception plays tricks on you.
Imagine standing in a familiar room when suddenly your surroundings begin to feel strange. The walls appear farther away. Your hands seem unusually large. The floor shifts beneath you. Time feels slower, and sounds take on a distorted echo. You blink, trying to make sense of it, but the feeling doesn't go away. This experience is known as Alice in Wonderland Syndrome, a rare neurological condition that causes significant distortions in perception, especially related to size, distance, and time. Named after the famous story by Lewis Carroll, it reflects the surreal and dreamlike sensations experienced by those affected. People with this syndrome might see objects as much smaller or larger than they are. They may feel that their own body parts are expanding or shrinking. Hallways may appear to stretch endlessly, and everyday sounds might seem unusually fast or slow. These changes are not hallucinations, they're perceptual distortions that the person recognizes as unusual but cannot control. The condition can be triggered by several factors, including migraines, neurological shifts, and in some cases, viral infections that temporarily affect the brain's processing centers. While it may sound alarming, most episodes are brief and non-dangerous, though certainly disorienting. What makes Alice in Wonderland Syndrome especially fascinating is how vividly it alters one's internal sense of reality. Even though nothing in the environment has changed, the brain's interpretation of size, shape, and time becomes completely unreliable. For many, it feels like stepping into a dream while fully awake. People experiencing these episodes often remain aware that something is off. They might say, "I know the room hasn't changed, but it looks wrong." Or, "My arm feels huge, but I know it isn't." This awareness can be reassuring, yet the experience still feels unsettling. Medical professionals focus on identifying and addressing the underlying causes, such as treating migraines or managing neurological activity. Reassurance, stress reduction, and consistent routines can also help individuals feel grounded during or after an episode. Alice in Wonderland Syndrome reminds us just how delicate our perception truly is. Our experience of reality depends not only on the senses, but on the brain's ability to interpret them accurately. When that process is disrupted, the world itself can become distorted, even if only for a moment. And in those moments, we're reminded how much we rely on our minds, not just to think, but to make sense of what's real.
Synesthesia, when the senses blend into each other. Imagine hearing a piece of music and suddenly seeing bursts of color dance across your vision, or tasting a specific flavor every time you hear a certain name. Perhaps you look at numbers and each one appears in its own unique color, even though they're all printed in black and white. This remarkable phenomenon is called synesthesia, a neurological condition where stimulation of one sense automatically triggers experiences in another. It's not imaginary or metaphorical. It's a consistent and involuntary perception where the senses overlap. People with synesthesia might associate letters with specific colors, experience sounds as physical textures, or feel emotions when seeing certain shapes. These associations are stable over time.
For example, someone might always see the letter A as red, or always perceive the number 7 as tasting like mint. Researchers believe synesthesia occurs due to increased connectivity or cross-activation between different sensory regions in the brain. While most people's senses operate separately, in synesthetes, these systems are more integrated, creating a rich tapestry of perception that blends sound, sight, taste, and touch. Synesthesia is not considered a disorder or impairment. In fact, many who experience it describe it as a gift. It can enhance creativity, memory, and emotional insight. Artists, musicians, and writers have often used their synesthetic experiences to inspire their work. Composer Franz Liszt reportedly described music in terms of colors and asked his orchestra to play passages more blue or less purple. There are different types of synesthesia. Grapheme color synesthesia involves seeing letters or numbers in color. Chromatisthesia links sounds with visual impressions. Lexical gustatory synesthesia causes words or names to trigger specific tastes. These experiences are automatic, not imagined or consciously created. For those who have it, synesthesia becomes a fundamental part of how they interpret the world. It can influence decisions, preferences, even relationships. Some report avoiding certain names because they taste unpleasant, or choosing favorite songs based on how they look. Though synesthesia is rare, affecting an estimated 1 in 2,000 to 1 in 20,000, depending on the type, it continues to intrigue scientists and creatives alike. Brain scans of synesthetes show unique activation patterns, offering insights into the vast potential of human perception. Synesthesia challenges our assumptions about the boundaries between the senses. It reminds us that the way we experience reality is not fixed, but filtered through the intricate and sometimes extraordinary wiring of the brain. Misophonia, when ordinary sounds trigger intense emotional reactions. Imagine sitting in a quiet room while someone nearby begins to chew their food. The sound is soft, repetitive, harmless, but suddenly your body tenses, your heart races, a wave of irritation or even rage floods over you. You want to leave, but you can't. The sound feels unbearable, almost painful. This is the experience of misophonia, a condition where specific everyday sounds trigger strong emotional responses, such as anger, anxiety, or disgust. These reactions are not simply annoyance, they are immediate, intense, and often disproportionate to the situation. The sounds that provoke misophonia are usually soft and repetitive, chewing, pen clicking, foot tapping, throat clearing, or breathing. What makes the condition especially challenging is that these sounds are common in daily life, making certain environments difficult to tolerate. Researchers believe misophonia may involve hyperconnectivity between the brain's auditory processing areas and the limbic system, which manages emotional responses. When this system misfires, the brain assigns a threat level to otherwise neutral sounds, causing a cascade of emotional and physiological stress. People with misophonia often anticipate the sounds that trigger them, which can create a cycle of anxiety and avoidance. They might withdraw from social situations, struggle in shared workspaces, or find it difficult to eat meals with others. Over time, this can lead to feelings of isolation or embarrassment. It's important to understand that misophonia is not about being overly sensitive or dramatic. The reactions are real, involuntary, and deeply rooted in how the brain processes sensory input. Individuals often report feeling trapped in their own bodies during a trigger, unable to focus, overwhelmed by emotion, and desperate to escape the sound. Treatment strategies for misophonia may include sound therapy, mindfulness techniques, or working with trained professionals to develop coping mechanisms. Creating predictable and quiet environments, using noise-canceling tools, or incorporating soft background sounds can also help reduce the impact of triggers. Misophonia is still being studied and awareness is growing. By acknowledging the condition and offering support rather than judgment, we create space for understanding and empathy. This rare sensory response reminds us that perception is deeply personal. What's neutral to one person may be overwhelming to another. And in a world filled with noise, the difference between peace and distress can sometimes come down to a single sound. Prosopagnosia, when you can no longer recognize faces. Imagine walking past a close friend on the street and not realizing who they are. They greet you by name, smile warmly, and wait for a response, but you draw a blank. Their voice is familiar, their clothes look right, but their face? Nothing. It's as if you're looking at a stranger. This condition is known as prosopagnosia, or face blindness. It's a rare neurological disorder that makes it difficult, or sometimes impossible, to recognize faces, even those of family, friends, or even your own reflection in the mirror. Prosopagnosia is not related to memory loss, vision problems, or lack of attention. People with this condition can describe facial features in detail, but they struggle to connect those features with identity. They may rely on other cues, such as voice, hairstyle, or clothing, to figure out who someone is. There are two types of prosopagnosia. Acquired prosopagnosia occurs after brain injury or neurological damage, often affecting the fusiform gyrus, a region specialized in facial recognition. Developmental prosopagnosia appears in childhood without any known injury, and the person may not realize they process faces differently until adulthood. For those with face blindness, social situations can be confusing and stressful. They might avoid large gatherings or worry about seeming rude when they fail to recognize someone they've met before. Everyday tasks like watching a movie or recognizing coworkers can become mental puzzles. Despite the challenges, many people with prosopagnosia develop creative coping strategies. Some memorize distinctive features like glasses or speech patterns. Others use context clues, such as where they are or who someone is standing near, to guess identities. Prosopagnosia is more common than most people think, affecting up to 2.5% of the population to varying degrees. It often goes undiagnosed because many individuals adapt quietly, believing they are simply bad with faces or socially awkward. Awareness and understanding can make a big difference. When friends, colleagues, and family members understand the condition, they can offer support without judgment or misunderstanding.
Prosopagnosia reveals just how complex human recognition really is. We assume facial recognition is effortless, but for some, it's a daily challenge that reshapes how they interact with the world. It's a powerful reminder that identity isn't just what we see, it's what we connect with. Anosognosia, when the brain denies its own condition. Imagine being told by your doctor that you've experienced a serious neurological event, yet you feel completely fine. You insist that there's nothing wrong, even though you can't move one side of your body or remember recent events. When others express concern, you dismiss it as a mistake. You don't feel ill, so how could you be? This puzzling condition is called anosognosia, a neurological phenomenon where a person is unaware of or denies their own illness or disability. Unlike denial driven by fear or avoidance, anosognosia stems from brain dysfunction itself. The person truly does not realize anything is wrong. It most commonly appears in individuals who have experienced strokes, particularly on the right side of the brain, or in those with certain psychiatric conditions. When the areas of the brain responsible for self-awareness are compromised, the mind loses its ability to recognize deficits in motor function, memory, or perception. This can manifest in many ways. A person with paralysis may try to stand up, unaware their leg isn't moving. Someone with severe memory loss might insist they remember everything clearly. In some cases, individuals may fabricate explanations for their symptoms, believing others are lying or exaggerating. What makes anosognosia especially complex is that it's not stubbornness or refusal to accept reality. It's an actual disconnect between the brain's awareness and the body's condition. To the person experiencing it, their perception feels complete and accurate. This disconnect can complicate treatment. If someone doesn't believe they're ill, they may resist therapy or refuse medication. That's why care strategies often involve empathy, patience, and creative communication, focusing on building trust rather than confrontation. Some individuals gradually regain awareness as brain function recovers, while others may live with anosognosia for extended periods. The degree of unawareness can vary from moment to moment, making it an unpredictable and deeply challenging experience. Anosognosia challenges how we define self-awareness. It shows us that consciousness of our own condition depends not just on information, but on the brain's capacity to process and integrate that information. It's a powerful reminder of how fragile the human sense of self can be, and how even the awareness of reality can be shaped or erased by the very system meant to perceive it.
Apotemnophilia, when the body doesn't feel complete. Imagine looking at your own leg or arm and feeling that it doesn't belong to you, not because of pain or injury, but because it simply doesn't feel like part of your identity. You might function normally, walk and move with ease, yet deep down you experience a persistent and unshakable belief. This limb should not be there. This rare condition is known as apotemnophilia, also called Body Integrity Identity Disorder, BIID. It's a psychological phenomenon in which a person feels an intense desire to remove or disable a healthy limb, not out of self-harm, but as a way to feel
whole, or aligned with their internal body image. Importantly, Apotemnophilia is not about attention-seeking or impulsivity. The desire is long-standing, deeply rooted, and often causes significant distress. Some individuals report feeling this way since childhood. The feeling is not related to pain, but rather to a mismatch between how the brain maps the body and how the person experiences it. Though research is limited, some studies suggest that the condition may be linked to differences in the brain's somatosensory cortex, the area that processes the sense of physical self. In people with BIID, the mural representation of the affected limb may be altered, leading to a sense that the limb does not belong. This condition is rare and controversial, both medically and ethically. Many individuals with apotemnophilia seek support to understand their experience, and some find relief through therapy that focuses on body image and acceptance. However, the intensity of the feeling can make daily life challenging, especially when others don't understand or believe what they are experiencing. Supportive environments and compassionate care are essential. Rather than judgment or dismissal, the focus should be on understanding the emotional and neurological roots of the condition. Some individuals may never act on their feelings, but the desire itself can impact mental health, self-esteem, and relationships. Apotemnophilia forces us to question what it means to feel complete in one's own body. Our sense of self is not only physical, it's deeply neurological and psychological. When the brain's image of the body doesn't match reality, the conflict can be profound. Déjà vu, when the present feels unshakably familiar. You walk into a room you've never seen before, and suddenly you're hit with a wave of familiarity. You pause. You're certain you've been here before. You know what someone is about to say. You know what's about to happen. But logically, you know it's impossible. You've never been in this place, never met these people. And yet, it feels like a memory unfolding in real time. This strange experience is called déjà vu, a French term meaning already seen. It refers to the eerie sensation that a new situation feels deeply familiar, as if you're reliving a moment from the past. It usually lasts only seconds, but it leaves a lasting impression, an unsettling blend of recognition and confusion. While almost everyone experiences déjà vu at some point, its cause remains one of psychology's most intriguing mysteries. Several theories attempt to explain it. One suggests that the brain briefly processes information through two separate pathways, and if one is delayed slightly, the moment is registered as both present and remembered, creating a false sense of familiarity. Another theory links déjà vu to temporal lobe activity, especially in areas associated with memory. Some researchers believe it's a sort of memory glitch where the brain misfires and mistakenly flags a new experience as a recollection. Importantly, déjà vu is common in healthy individuals and doesn't usually indicate a medical issue. However, in some cases, frequent or intense déjà vu can be associated with neurological conditions, which is why patterns and frequency are sometimes evaluated by professionals. There's also a psychological perspective. Déjà vu might occur when a current situation closely resembles something we've seen or imagined in a dream, or even in fiction, triggering a subconscious recognition that feels unexplainable. Regardless of its origin, the feeling of déjà vu reminds us that memory and perception are not perfect. The brain is constantly filtering and interpreting massive amounts of information, and sometimes those processes overlap in unexpected ways. Déjà Vu offers a rare glimpse into the complexity of human cognition. It's a reminder that even the most familiar feelings can arise from invisible patterns, and that our experience of time and memory is more flexible and more mysterious than we realize.
The Fregoli Delusion, when everyone feels like the same person in disguise. Imagine walking down the street and believing that strangers passing by are not really strangers at all. In your mind, they're all the same person, just cleverly disguised. The barista, the taxi driver, the person behind you in line, they all seem to be variations of one identity, shifting appearances to watch or manipulate you. This is known as the Fregoli Delusion, a rare condition in which someone believes that different people are actually a single individual repeatedly changing their appearance or identity. It's a type of delusional misidentification syndrome, and it can significantly distort a person's experience of reality. The condition is named after Leopoldo Fregoli, an early 20th century actor known for his rapid costume changes during performances. In the psychological sense, this delusion is not about admiration or recognition. It's about suspicion, confusion, and often fear. Fregoli delusion is most commonly associated with neurological damage, psychiatric disorders, or certain neurodegenerative conditions. It's believed to result from disruptions in the brain areas responsible for facial recognition, memory, and emotional processing. When these systems malfunction, the brain may attempt to make sense of unfamiliar faces by linking them to a known identity, even if the connection makes no logical sense. For someone experiencing this delusion, the belief is usually unshakable. They may accuse others of impersonation or express paranoia about being followed or manipulated. These perceptions are not based on evidence, but on an internal conviction that feels real and urgent. Treatment typically involves addressing the underlying condition through a combination of therapy, medication, and structured support. Creating a consistent and calm environment can help reduce distress and improve orientation to reality. The Fregoli delusion highlights how fragile and constructed our sense of recognition truly is. We trust our brains to distinguish friend from stranger, familiar from unfamiliar. But when those mental systems misfire, the world can become a confusing place where identity itself becomes unstable. It reminds us that perception isn't just about what we see. It's about how our brains interpret and assign meaning to what we see. And when that meaning becomes distorted, even the most ordinary interactions can take on a different tone and deeply unsettling. Palinopsia, when visual echoes refuse to fade. Imagine glancing at a glowing traffic light and then looking away, only to continue seeing its red circle hovering in the air, trailing behind as you move your eyes. You blink, but the image lingers. You try to focus on something new, but that leftover light seems burned into your vision. It's not just a brief afterimage. It lasts, and it repeats. This phenomenon is called Palinopsia, a rare visual condition where images persist or reappear in your vision even after the original stimulus is gone. The name comes from Greek roots meaning again and seeing.
People with Palinopsia might see light trails, visual echoes, or ghost-like duplications of objects long after they should have disappeared. Palinopsia is typically divided into two types. Illusory palinopsia is triggered by external visual stimuli, like lights or movement, and often occurs in low-light environments. Hallucinatory palinopsia, on the other hand, involves vivid, detailed images that return without any immediate visual cause. This condition can be caused by changes in the brain's visual processing centers, particularly in the occipital lobe. It may also be related to migraines, seizures, or side effects from certain medications. While it can feel disorienting, palinopsia is not always linked to a serious condition, but persistent symptoms should be evaluated by a specialist. Unlike optical illusions or simple afterimages that fade quickly, palinopsia can disrupt daily activities. Reading may become difficult if previous words linger on the page. Driving may feel unsafe if bright lights leave visual trails that confuse your perception. For some, the experience is occasional and manageable. For others, it may occur more frequently and unpredictably. Treatment depends on the underlying cause. If it's related to medication or neurological activity, adjusting those factors may reduce symptoms. Techniques like using softer lighting, avoiding strong contrasts, and taking regular screen breaks can help manage visual discomfort. Palinopsia reminds us how deeply the brain influences what we see. Our eyes may act as lenses, but it's the brain that assembles the image. And sometimes that assembly doesn't go as expected, leaving traces of light and shape that should have vanished, but don't. It challenges our assumption that vision is immediate and clean. In truth, vision is a process. And when the process echoes, perception becomes layered, strange, and at times beautifully eerie.
Cryptomnesia, when forgotten memories masquerade as new ideas. Have you ever come up with an idea that felt completely original, only to discover later that you had heard or read it somewhere before? Maybe you told a story, thinking it was yours, but someone else swears they told it to you first. You're not lying. You genuinely believed the memory or idea came from within you. This mental slip is known as cryptomnesia, a condition where people recall information without realizing it's a memory. Instead, they experience it as a new thought, belief, or creation. It's not about intentional plagiarism or deception. It's a trick played by the mind. Cryptomnesia occurs when the brain fails to label a memory as something previously learned. The source is forgotten, but the content remains. As a result, a remembered phrase, tune, or story reemerges in the mind, but feels original. This happens more often than most people realize, and in many cases, it's harmless. Writers, musicians, and creatives may be especially prone to cryptomnesia, as their work draws from a wide range of influences. A melody once heard in passing can resurface months later, sounding like an inspired invention. An author might create a scene that closely mirrors something they read years ago, unaware of the connection. Psychologists believe this phenomenon is linked to how memories are stored and retrieved. The content of a memory may surface clearly, but the source tag, the context that tells us where it came from, can be weak or missing. When that tag is gone, the brain fills in the blanks by assuming the idea is new.
Cryptomnesia is also related to cognitive bias. Our minds are wired to connect patterns and construct narratives. When a thought emerges naturally and fits the current situation, it feels genuine, even if it came from somewhere else. Understanding this condition can foster self-compassion. Recognizing that a repeated idea may not be intentional helps reduce guilt and encourages curiosity about how memory really works. In collaborative settings, it also encourages openness and credit sharing when overlapping ideas occur. Cryptomnesia reminds us that the mind is not a perfect filing cabinet. It's a dynamic, creative system, always mixing past and present. And sometimes, in that blend, what's old becomes new again, without us even realizing it. Aphantasia, when the mind's eyes blind. Imagine being asked to picture your childhood home. You know the address, you remember the people, and you can describe details like the color of the walls or the location of the kitchen. But when you close your eyes, there's nothing there. No mental image, no inner movie, just darkness. This is the experience of aphantasia, a rare condition where individuals are unable to visualize mental images. While most people can summon pictures in their minds, whether vividly or faintly, those with aphantasia process memory, imagination, and visualization without any internal visuals. The term aphantasia was first introduced in the 19th century, but gained modern recognition in recent years as researchers began exploring the wide variation in how people imagine. For those with aphantasia, it's not about lacking memory or creativity. They can remember facts, create stories, and recognize faces, but they don't experience a visual component to those thoughts. Aphantasia exists on a spectrum. Some people have partial imagery or vague shapes. Others experience a complete absence of visual imagination. And yet they often function with equal intelligence, emotional depth, and problem-solving ability as those with vivid mental imagery. This condition has led to fascinating insights into how people think. Some rely heavily on verbal, auditory, or spatial reasoning instead of visual imagery. For instance, they may recall directions using logical sequences rather than imagining landmarks. Or they might recall a face by describing its features rather than seeing it in their mind. Many people with aphantasia don't realize they experience the world differently until adulthood. It often comes to light during casual conversations about dreams or imagination, when they discover others literally see images in their minds. Importantly, aphantasia is not considered a disorder. It's simply a different way of processing information. Some people with it are accomplished artists, engineers, or writers. Their creativity flows through other channels, words, feelings, sounds, or structured logic. Scientists are still studying the neurological roots of aphantasia. Early research suggests differences in brain activity in areas linked to visualization and memory recall. While more studies are needed, aphantasia continues to reshape how we understand imagination, memory, and the diversity of the human mind. Aphantasia reminds us that not all minds work the same way. Some people think in pictures, others think in words, emotions, or structure. and all of them in their own way are capable of creating extraordinary things, even without a picture in their head. Hyperthymesia, when you remember every day of your life. Imagine being able to recall with precise detail what you did on any given date. Ask about a random Tuesday from 10 years ago, and you instantly remember what you wore, what you ate, what the weather was like, and what news was on TV. The memories arrive not as fragments, but as vivid, complete scenes playing in your mind. This extraordinary ability is known as hyperthymesia, or highly superior autobiographical memory, HSAM. People with hyperthymesia can recall the events of their lives with remarkable accuracy, often going back decades. Their memories are not just clear, they're automatic, emotional, and often overwhelming. Unlike those with photographic memory, individuals with hyperthymesia don't remember everything they read or see. Their gift is specifically tied to personal experiences, daily events, conversations, emotions, and timelines that most people would forget. What for others fades into the past remains fully alive in their minds. The cause of hyperthymesia is still not fully understood. Brain scans of individuals with HSAM show differences in regions linked to memory and emotion, such as the amygdala and temporal lobes. These areas may interact more intensely, allowing memories to be encoded and stored with emotional richness and unusual durability. While it may sound like a superpower, hyperthymesia is not without challenges. The constant stream of vivid memory can make it difficult to move on from past events. Mistakes, losses, and regrets don't fade with time. They remain as clear as the day they happened. Some individuals report emotional fatigue or difficulty staying present due to their intense mental time travel. However, many also find meaning in their ability. They treasure the clarity of their lives, the ability to remember loved ones, and the chance to learn deeply from past experiences. They often excel in organizing timelines, detecting patterns in behavior, or relating to others through shared memories. Hyperthymesia challenges our understanding of memory's role in identity. While most people experience life as a series of fading impressions, those with HSAM carry their history with them in real time. It's a reminder that memory isn't just about facts. It's about connection, emotion, and the personal story that shapes who we are. And for those with hyperthymesia, that story is always just a heartbeat away. Somatoparaphrenia, when a body part feels like it doesn't belong. Imagine looking at your own arm and feeling certain that it isn't yours. You recognize its shape, its movement, even the way it responds when you touch it, but deep inside, you're convinced that the limb belongs to someone else. You may say it was attached by mistake, or that it was left there by accident. No matter the logic, the belief feels real. This is the experience of somatoparaphrenia, a rare condition where a person denies ownership of a limb or even an entire side of their body. It typically arises following neurological events such as strokes, particularly those affecting the right parietal lobe, which helps integrate sensory information and spatial awareness. Unlike Apotemnophilia, where someone desires the removal of a limb to feel complete, somatoparaphrenia involves the firm belief that the limb is already foreign. The person may neglect, ignore, or speak about the limb as if it were a separate entity. In clinical settings, individuals might say things like, "That's not my arm, it belongs to someone else," or "I don't know whose leg that is, but it's not mine." Some even attempt to cover or move away from the limb, treating it like an unwelcome object. The condition is believed to result from a disruption in the body schema, the brain's internal map of the body. When sensory feedback, proprioception, and self-awareness are no longer aligned, the brain tries to make sense of the conflict. And sometimes it resolves that conflict by rejecting part of the body as foreign. Treating somatoparaphrenia involves more than just explanation. Logical arguments or mirrors rarely change the person's conviction. Instead, therapy focuses on improving awareness, restoring sensory integration, and gently reintroducing the brain to its own physical reality. For caregivers and professionals, patience and empathy are crucial. While the belief may seem irrational, it's based on real disruptions in perception, not stubbornness or delusion in the traditional sense. Somatoparaphrenia reveals just how complex our sense of bodily self truly is. We think of our body as something we simply inhabit, but in truth, it's something our brain constantly reconstructs. And when that reconstruction falters, even the most familiar parts of us can become unfamiliar, distant, or alien.
Ideomotor Effect, when your body moves without your mind. Imagine placing your hand gently on a table, holding a pen or pointer, and watching it slowly shift or tilt without any conscious effort. You're not pushing, you're not trying to move, but the motion is there. It feels subtle, automatic, almost magical. You might wonder, is something else guiding your hand? This is the ideomotor effect, a psychological phenomenon where thoughts, expectations, or subconscious beliefs influence small muscle movements without conscious intention. It's the same principle that explains why dowsing rods seem to move on their own, or why Ouija boards give the illusion of external guidance. The movements are real, but they originate from within. Your brain generates a prediction or expectation, and your body responds with imperceptible motor activity. You don't feel yourself moving, but the muscles follow the thought. The ideomotor effect has been studied for over a century and is often cited as a demonstration of how strongly suggestion can influence the body. It's not trickery or fakery. Participants genuinely believe they aren't controlling the motion because the movements occur below the threshold of conscious awareness. This effect has played a role in various cultural rituals and pseudoscientific tools. Dowsing rods, spirit writing, pendulum responses, and automatic writing all rely on the ideomotor effect to produce motion that feels external. But in reality, it's the brain and body working in sync without telling the conscious mind. Understanding this phenomenon helps us grasp how powerful expectation and belief can be. The brain doesn't always wait for conscious command to initiate movement. Instead, it acts on anticipation, often blurring the line between thought and action. In therapeutic contexts, the ideomotor effect is used in techniques like hypnotic suggestion or guided imagery, helping individuals explore subconscious beliefs through movement or symbol. It serves as a bridge between intention and behavior, revealing how deeply intertwined mind and body are. This phenomenon reminds us that not all motion requires will. Sometimes thought alone is enough to move us, literally. The ideomotor effect is subtle, fascinating, and a window into the quiet ways our minds influence our physical world.
Zeigarnik Effect. When unfinished tasks stick in your mind. You finish a long day of work, ready to relax, but your mind keeps circling back to the email you didn't send or the project you didn't quite wrap up. You try to focus on something else, but that incomplete task keeps buzzing in the background like an unresolved melody. This mental tension is explained by the Zeigarnik Effect, a psychological principle that suggests people remember uncompleted or interrupted tasks better than completed ones. The brain flags unfinished business as mentally open, holding it in focus until it's resolved. The effect is named Zeigarnik, a psychologist who noticed that restaurant servers remembered unpaid orders more accurately than completed ones. Once the check was paid, the memory seemed to vanish. But while it was still in progress, the details stayed sharp. Our brains are wired to seek closure. An incomplete task creates a kind of mental itch, an open loop that the brain keeps active in working memory. This can boost motivation and focus when used intentionally, like in storytelling or productivity. Cliffhangers, for example, thrive on the Zeigarnik effect, keeping viewers engaged by leaving questions unanswered. But it can also lead to stress or sleep disruption, especially when many open loops accumulate. People may struggle to relax if their mind is juggling too many to-do lists or unresolved decisions. In practical terms, the Zeigarnik effect can be managed. Writing down tasks or making concrete plans helps the brain feel that progress is being made, allowing it to let go of the need to constantly remind itself. Structured routines and intentional closure also reduce mental clutter. This effect offers valuable insight into how memory, emotion, and focus interact. It's not just the content of a task that matters, but its state of completion. Our brains crave resolution, not to forget, but to move forward. The Zeigarnik effect reminds us that attention isn't passive. It's goal-driven, resolution-seeking, and deeply influenced by what's left undone. Sometimes the key to mental peace isn't doing everything, but simply knowing what still needs to be done.
Earworm Phenomenon, when a song gets stuck in your head. You hear a catchy tune once, and hours later, it's still looping in your mind. You're doing laundry, working, or trying to sleep, and yet, there it is, the same line, the same beat, over and over. You hum it without meaning to. You try to stop, but your brain plays it again. This common mental glitch is known as the earworm phenomenon, or involuntary musical imagery. It refers to the experience of having a piece of music play repeatedly in your mind, even when you're not actively listening to it or trying to recall it. Earworms are incredibly common. Studies suggest that over 90% of people experience them regularly. They're usually short, simple, and repetitive, traits that make certain songs more sticky in our mental playlist. Psychologists believe that earworms arise from the brain's pattern recognition systems. When we hear a catchy melody, our brains naturally predict what comes next. If the music is interrupted or incomplete, the brain may continue playing it internally, trying to finish the loop. In some cases, emotional associations or repetitive exposure increase the likelihood. Interestingly, earworms tend to surface during low-attention tasks, walking, cleaning, or driving, when the brain is free to wander. They're not harmful, but they can be distracting. And the harder you try to suppress them, the more persistent they become. Strategies to remove an earworm include listening to the full song to satisfy the brain's loop, switching to a different melody, or engaging in an activity that requires focused attention. Chewing gum, oddly enough, has also been shown to reduce earworms by occupying parts of the brain linked to auditory processing. The earworm phenomenon highlights how memory and attention are not fully under conscious control. Our brains are constantly absorbing, storing, and replaying information, sometimes whether we like it or not. It's a reminder that even silence has a soundtrack. And once a song enters your mental theater, it may take a bow, but rarely exits on cue. Savant Syndrome, when extraordinary talent emerges alongside disability. Imagine meeting someone who can solve complex mathematical equations instantly, play a full concerto after hearing it once, or recall the exact weather on any date from decades ago. Now imagine that this same individual struggles with basic daily tasks or communication. The contrast feels impossible, but it's real. This rare condition is known as Savant Syndrome, in which remarkable abilities coexist with developmental or cognitive challenges. These abilities, often related to memory, music, art, or calculation, stand in stark contrast to the person's overall functioning. Most individuals with Savant syndrome are diagnosed with neurodevelopmental conditions, particularly within the autism spectrum, though it can also appear after brain injuries. In some cases, the exceptional skill is present from birth. In others, it emerges unexpectedly after trauma, known as acquired Savant syndrome. What's remarkable is the specificity. A person may struggle with basic conversation, but draw entire cityscapes from memory with photographic detail. Another may struggle with abstract reasoning, but instantly know the result of multiplying large numbers in their head. Researchers are still exploring how savant abilities form. One theory suggests that damage to the left hemisphere of the brain, often linked to logic and language, may allow the right hemisphere, associated with pattern recognition and creativity, to become more active. Others propose that we all possess similar abilities, but they're filtered out by typical brain function, and in savants, that filter is reduced. Importantly, Savant Syndrome is not a guarantee of genius. The extraordinary talent is usually narrow, deeply focused, and often not under conscious control. Many individuals with savant traits lead fulfilling lives, but may require support in daily functioning. Public fascination with Savant Syndrome is often fueled by media portrayals, but real cases are diverse and nuanced. Each individual has their own unique strengths and challenges, and what may appear as superhuman is often the result of intense focus, memory specialization, and unique neural wiring.
Caputo Effect, when you stare in a mirror and see strange faces. Imagine sitting alone in a dimly lit room, staring at your reflection in a mirror. At first, everything looks normal, but after a minute or two, your face begins to shift. The features blur, distort, or morph into unfamiliar shapes. You might see someone else's face, an animal, or even something abstract or unsettling. You blink, but it's still happening. This is known as the Caputo Effect, a psychological illusion that occurs when you fixate on your own face under low-light conditions. Named after psychologist Giovanni Caputo, who first documented the phenomenon, it's a haunting example of how sensory input and mental expectation can create surreal visual experiences. The effect typically appears after about a minute of uninterrupted staring. The brain, faced with minimal stimulus and repetitive visual input, begins to adapt. In that adaptation process, facial recognition systems can misfire, creating distortions, hallucinations, or imagined transformations. This is not a sign of illness or instability. In fact, it happens to many people under the right conditions. The Caputo effect is thought to involve a combination of neural fatigue, perceptual instability, and self-face dissociation. When the visual input remains constant, the brain fills in gaps or creates variation to maintain attention. The experience can be unsettling or even frightening, especially when unfamiliar faces appear. Some describe it as ghostly or otherworldly. Others experience a sense of detachment from self, as if watching a stranger through the mirror. Researchers have studied the Caputo effect to explore how the brain processes identity, familiarity, and visual boundaries. It offers insight into the fragility of perception and the role of expectation in shaping what we see. Practically speaking, this effect has also been used in therapeutic settings. Some forms of mirror-gazing meditation use the phenomenon to explore self-perception and emotional awareness. However, it's not recommended for individuals prone to dissociation or anxiety, as the experience can be intense. The Caputo effect reminds us that our reflection isn't always a fixed image. It's filtered through the brain's interpretation, and when that filter shifts, the face staring back at us might not be our own.
Semantic satiation, when a word temporarily loses its meaning. Have you ever repeated a word over and over again until it suddenly started to sound strange, like a meaningless noise? You say the word door 10 times in a row, and suddenly it doesn't feel like a word anymore. It loses all connection to its concept. It just becomes sound. This curious phenomenon is called semantic satiation, and it happens when a word or phrase is repeated so frequently that it temporarily loses its meaning. The brain, overwhelmed by repetition, stops associating the sound with its original concept, creating a momentary disconnect between language and understanding. The effect typically sets in after 15 to 30 repetitions and lasts only a few seconds. It's reversible and harmless, but can feel oddly disorienting. You're aware that the word should make sense, yet it seems hollow or alien, like a familiar path suddenly turned unfamiliar. Semantic satiation was first studied in the mid-20th century and is often used in psycholinguistics to understand how language and memory interact. It's believed to result from neural fatigue in the semantic processing centers of the brain. When the same stimulus is repeated rapidly, the neurons involved become temporarily less responsive, causing the link between sound and meaning to weaken. This effect doesn't happen with every kind of repetition. It works specifically with language because of how tightly our brains connect sounds to meaning. Other types of sensory repetition, like visual images or smells, may create different forms of desensitization, but not quite the same mental break as semantic satiation. While often a curious novelty, the phenomenon has practical applications. In therapy, repetition can be used to desensitize emotional responses to certain phrases or memories. In advertising, overexposure to slogans can reduce their impact. And in education, the timing and variation of repetition can make a big difference in how well students retain meaning. Semantic satiation reminds us that meaning is not fixed. It's something the brain actively builds and maintains. And when we push that system too hard, even the most familiar words can momentarily collapse into meaningless sound. Visual snow syndrome, when static covers the world. Imagine waking up one day and noticing that the world looks grainy. Everywhere you look, there's a layer of tiny flickering dots like static on a television screen. You blink, but it doesn't go away. It's not in your mind. It's not your imagination. It's always there, overlaying everything you see. This is the experience of visual snow syndrome, a rare neurological condition in which individuals perceive constant visual static. The snow can appear in light or dark conditions, with eyes open or closed, and may be accompanied by other symptoms like light sensitivity, afterimages, or trailing effects behind moving objects. The condition is not caused by vision problems or eye issues. Eye exams often come back normal. Instead, it's believed to originate in the visual processing areas of the brain, where hyperactivity or misfiring neurons create a constant background of noise in the visual field. Visual snow can vary in intensity. For some, it's subtle, only noticeable at night or on dark surfaces. For others, it's severe enough to interfere with daily activities, reading, or concentration. The condition is often chronic, and while it may fluctuate, it rarely disappears entirely. Researchers are still uncovering the exact causes. It may be related to migraine activity, overactive visual cortex responses, or sensory dysregulation. Though it shares some features with migraine aura, visual snow is distinct and not always linked to pain or other symptoms. There is currently no definitive cure, but many people manage the condition with lifestyle adjustments. Reducing screen time, avoiding bright lights, managing stress, and using visual filters or tinted glasses can help alleviate the discomfort. Some find relief through neurological therapies aimed at calming overactive sensory pathways. Visual snow syndrome reminds us that perception is not purely optical. The brain plays a critical role in filtering, shaping, and presenting what we see. And when that filter becomes noisy, even a clear day can feel like it's covered in static.
Echolalia, when the mind repeats what it hears. Imagine asking someone how their day was, and instead of answering, they repeat your question back to you word for word. You say, "How are you today?" and they respond, "How are you today?" It's not mockery or confusion. It's an automatic, involuntary repetition. This is echolalia, a condition where a person repeats sounds, words, or phrases they've just heard, often without intending to or understanding why. It can be immediate, occurring right after the words are heard, or delayed, repeating something heard earlier, often in a different context. Both forms may appear in early language development, even in typical children, but when persistent, it may signal the brain's unique way of processing speech. Echolalia is not meaningless. Many individuals use it as a bridge toward more spontaneous language. Therapists often work to build on echolalia by helping individuals expand responses or connect phrases to specific needs. The brain mechanisms behind echolalia are not fully understood, but they likely involve differences in auditory processing, working memory, and language integration. For some, it's a way to hold on to a thought or stimulus. For others, it's comforting or rhythmically soothing. Echolalia reminds us that communication takes many forms. What may sound repetitive or unusual could be an attempt to engage, process, or learn. It challenges the assumption that all speech must be original to be meaningful, and highlights the importance of listening with curiosity and patience.